So, Dr. Lindsay Williamson, oh my goodness, I am so excited to have this conversation with you today. I'm so excited to introduce you to our audience. And we're going to be talking about the nervous system. But before we get into that,
what a ride it has been for me. So I now work as an acupuncturist and Chinese medicine doctor, but my journey began probably 15 years ago when I was living a very different life, let's say. So in my early 20s, I really didn't know anything about nervous system regulation. I didn't know how to handle the emotional body. I just had a lot of stress in my life, but I didn't know what to do with it. So I ended up just doing the best I could, which meant working out a lot, which meant coping with food, which meant not managing my relationships and having a lot of psycho-emotional stuff build up. And for me, what happened was that I actually didn't have to decide to do anything. My body just decided to break down on me. So it was kind of like I really didn't have to decide anything. It was decided for me. My body just stopped functioning. I just went into complete burnout. My goodness, my nervous system tanked. And when your nervous system tanks, all other systems tend to follow afterwards.
yeah.
So my digestion tanked, my metabolism tanked, my hormones tanked. So here I was in my early 20s. I was working at the time in the Pentagon. And I had gained like 20 pounds. I was having trouble digesting food. I was tired all the time. And I was miserable. And I was going from a like totally high functioning young adult to this exhausted shell of a human. I hate to say it, but that's kind of what it felt. And so I had to make changes, and I had to make them like very big shifts. So quit my job, just went full force into learning about how I could heal my body. The more and more I go into this journey, the more and more I realize how much psycho-emotional stress and the nervous system has the top-down effect on all other systems in the body. And so it really has been this journey of diving into how I can affect the physical by affecting the nervous system, which is the energetic. And then that opened up a whole new world to me. And that's kind of where I'm living now, is really realizing that everything around us is energy. Our bodies are energy. Our nervous system is pure energy. And how we interact with our environment, with the energy around us, with the relationships around us, the bodies around us, impacts the psycho-emotional body, it impacts the physical body, it impacts everything.
When we first got to know each other, I mean, we were doing CrossFit in San Diego.
Yes.
And, different journey, right? We all have our own individual journeys. But when I landed in San Diego, I had just come off of a very stressful kind of job situation, a lot of burnout. It was one of the phases of burnout that I had experienced. I find it so interesting that for so many people, until they start to really dive into some of the work that you've dove into, you almost think that you have to go harder. And you do things that, those really intense exercises, if things aren't working well for your body, maybe you've gained some weight or you're feeling an immense amount of stress, you've got to do more and like really push yourself to figure it out. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that kind of softer side. And the beauty that comes out of understanding that it's not always about, going hard and pushing yourself, but what we can do to really heal the nervous system that takes some of that more gentler approach.
And gentle and softness in our culture has so much been confused with like less than, or, it's an interesting paradigm that we live in America, right? It's like harder, faster, go, caffeine, like capitalism, more. And that's fire energy, right? And fire is beautiful, but it can burn, it can burn out, as we both know.
Yeah.
And so learning how to balance that fire energy with water, which is softness, which is surrender, which is presence, which is almost like the feminine in a way, to really balance the system. And when the system's balanced, it operates on a whole more efficiently. And so it's this interesting paradigm where when you feel this urge to go faster, you slow down and it actually works out better. But it's hard to let go sometimes because our nervous systems get addicted to a fast lifestyle.
Yeah.
We get addicted to cortisol rushes. We get addicted to always having something to do or something to look at. It's you really have to retrain your body and your nervous system how to just be instead of do. Yeah. And that's a journey that we're all on.
When you're working with your clients, what are some of the things that you see most commonly of somebody who is experiencing burnout and has a really dysregulated nervous system? What are some of the common things that are showing up for them?
It can show up in so many different ways. In women, it shows up usually as digestive issues and hormonal issues because the nervous system's directly tied in to that. And for men, it can show up also with like low libido, with digestive issues as well. I've worked primarily with women because with women, we tend to open to regulating our psycho-emotional stress a little bit easier. Although men, the tide's kind of changing and kind of recognizing the role that this medicine can help, and opening up and being vulnerable and saying, hey, I have these emotions that I know that they're not manifesting in a healthy way, like through my habits, through my relationships, like there's something that needs to shift. So on the physical side, it shows up as like trouble sleeping, shows up as waking up feeling exhausted. It shows up as poor digestion. So you start to not digest your food properly because your nervous system, one of the main nerves that regulates digestion, is turned off when you're stressed. And so that digestive nerve isn't functioning properly. And so when you're more that water mode, we'll call it, your digestive system has more juice to let you digest things properly, which then affects your gut microbiome, which then affects your metabolism. So oftentimes you could have trouble losing weight or weight just sticks around. When you have an imbalanced nervous system, it's a cascade effect, right? So it's a top-down commander. And so you could have an imbalanced nervous system and it could be resulting in, like for me, in my case, it was resulting in the digestion, the metabolism, my thyroid labs tanked, my period just left. And the key for me was regulating the nervous system. But when you do, it's a top-down commander. So there's a waterfall effect. So all other systems just magically align into place. And that's such a missing key, I think, in a lot of health practitioners, is that they focus too much on trying to heal a single thing. And they kind of ignore the psycho-emotional stress because it's hard to, there's no pill that there's no herb. I mean, you have you have nervous system herbs like ashwagandha, and you have adaptogens that can help regulate things. But when it comes to psycho-emotional stress, you got to like wake up and be willing to observe and change your nervous system wiring, how you respond to the environment. And it's not as simple as a herbal prescription. And so a lot of practitioners, because they don't have the tools for that, will ignore it, even though it's the baseline thing that needs to be addressed.
Well, and I think that, it's so interesting. When we first started working together, like many people, I was hoping like, oh, there is going to be this herb that I can take, or, there's a little bit more of this quick fix, or, and what I learned when we worked together was that a lot of this has to do with, breathing properly.
Yes.
And settling in and paying attention to my thoughts and my feelings. And there's, I think, a little bit of a disconnect there. At least what I experienced was, okay, that's great. And I understand logically that that's going to be helpful, but how can this be the thing? Or like, how can my breathing exercises really cascade down and help me in such a powerful way? Like, I'm still, even though I've worked on this now, I'm still in this place where I'm like, are my breathing exercises really going to be that helpful? Come on. Or is that cold plunge really going to be that effective? Right. And so I think that for anybody that's getting started in this work, we want to have that quick fix. We want to have something that is a little bit more tangible. And I think that society has taught us that, oh, maybe there is a pill that's out there that's going to make everything magically better. But the reality of the situation is, if you've gone from this place of stress and extreme stress without regulation and without creating more resilience in your life, and you've gone from like fight or flight and all the way over to freeze or faint, and now you're trying to work on being able to regulate your nervous system so that you can bounce back more quickly, it does come down to simple things like breath work.
It is. And it's not even like fancy breath work. It's literally just breathing. And it's almost, the mind doesn't want to believe it can be that simple. The mind the mind wants to have a protocol and a program, and it wants to pay a bunch of money for a solution that's going to work. And it really comes down to things that are very free, very accessible in every moment. It's like too good and too simple to be true. And so the body doesn't do it. It kind of sweeps it under the rug and reaches out for other solutions.
Could you talk a little bit about cortisol?
So cortisol is a hormone. Cortisol is like all hormones, they're messengers in the body. And so cortisol is one of our primary, it's a very kind of, we can call it lizard brain, because it's been around for a while and it's present in a lot of animals, because evolutionarily, cortisol is used as kind of your alarm system in the body. The stress that we experience in, let's say, America is very different from prehistoric stress, right? We can agree that we're not, running from woolly mammoths, all the things. But interestingly enough, our body still processes it the same way. And this is a pretty key point, that when you receive like a passive aggressive email from your boss, or when you're in conflict with a significant other or family, or you're feeling a deadline at work, your body responds the exact same way. It's the same wiring as that prehistoric stress. And so we've gotten ourselves into a situation where we don't have a healthy stress response. And so I also want to make it clear that stress is not all unhealthy. There's positive stress and there's negative stress. And you want the positive stress in your life, because positive stress helps you adapt, it helps you grow, it helps you change. But when you peak, so when you go over that, it starts to go into strain and then negative stress. The task, I think the big missing link in a lot of discomfort and suffering and body pains, and the wanting to have a healthier metabolism, and the wanting to have healthy relationships, and the wanting to have, smooth, balanced moods, it relates back to learning how to regulate the psycho-emotional stress, because that's the way our body is mostly responding to stress in these times.
Amazing. Does that play into heart rate variability at all? Can you talk a little bit about that and help everybody understand, what does heart rate variability mean? What does it measure, and what does that tell us maybe about how we're regulating our stress?
So heart rate variability is a measure that kind of determines your readiness, would be a word for the day. So it kind of determines what your nervous system is like. And so if you have a fight, if you have like a big fight with your significant other, if you sleep poorly, maybe if you eat like a meal that makes you feel like crap, your heart rate variability will be in the toilet. And that means that your nervous system isn't really ready to take on stress for the day. And so in that case, you can start to inform what your workouts will be like or what your day will be like, because you need to do a little bit of recovering, right?
Yeah.
And so I think biotechnology is a really cool tool, and it's really good metric for those that like data.
I always say, whenever we look at any of this, whether it's, heart rate variability on your watch, or, the sleep score that you might get on your watch, or even stepping on the scale, like it's all just data. It doesn't mean anything negative or positive. It's just information that then we can use in order to make some informed decisions, right?
Yes, that's a great point. It's releasing yourself of any sort of like psycho-emotional stress you're giving yourself, because that's another thing. Like tracking can become an issue if it's not done with the right intentions or the right ways, because it can then create guilt or shame, or this drive that you need to work harder or do something different, or you should have done something differently. I think what's most useful is that you start to learn how to become self-sufficient outside of data. And the way you do that is that you start to associate. So you look at the heart rate variability or whatever the metrics are, and you say, okay, this is what a rested nervous system feels like. And you start to pair that. And so, you don't have to be reliant on technology to tell you how you're feeling. You can be okay, I know this is what this feels like. Check, I'm there. Or when you're not, you're like, oh, this feels like I'm really not in a readiness, like high readiness. This is what a day feels like, where I need to nourish more, where I need to like check in with my workout, where I need to check in with any sort of like stress or relationships I've been avoiding.
How do we start to feel what it feels like if that has been something that's maybe been challenging?
You want to start to realize that there's different parts of yourself. And this can be a little bit weird for people that haven't done this before, but just you can start to maybe pull back and look at yourself as if you were looking at a movie, right? So as if you're watching yourself. So you can kind of take your awareness and you can kind of like pull it outside your body and be like, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm talking to Lindsay, we're having a lovely conversation. And so this kind of pulling out your awareness and looking at yourself is something called the observer, or consciousness. It's a stage of consciousness, at least. And from that neutral observer place, you can start to see different parts of yourself. First part of kind of regulating your nervous system is bringing that awareness in. It's bringing that observer in to start to say, okay, here's the part of me that gets really angry when my partner doesn't do the dishes. Right? Or here's the part of me that feels really guilty and just fed up and frustrated when I get on the scale and there's a higher number. And then it's starting to build that little bit of a pause where you have that feeling, you have that thought, you have the emotion, and then you can go out to the observer and say, okay, there's this part of me that's doing it. It's not me.
Not all of me.
Yes. Exactly. And then when you're not identified as that, right? So when you're not identified as the person that gets frustrated when they step on the scale, or when their spouse does something that like pisses them off, or whatever it is, you start to build a little bit of space. And that little bit of space is actually regulating to your nervous system, because then it kind of cuts out the knee-jerk response of going into some sort of cascade of chemicals that get released when you have emotions that probably aren't very balancing to your nervous system. And this is one of the easiest, simplest, and hardest all at once to do.
See, in my mind, I'm sitting here going, okay, so that was the hard one. That's definitely, finding yourself in that place of even something like doing a body scan.
Yeah.
And being that observer as you're doing the body scan.
Yeah.
it takes practice.
Oh, yeah.
It takes
Yeah.
time and practice. It's not overly complicated
Yep.
because you're just literally sitting there.
Yep.
But it's so easy to fall back into patterns of, getting pulled away with thoughts and,
Yes.
the thinking I am the person that gets frustrated.
Exactly. Creating that separation and realizing that, yes, there's a part of you that is frustrated and it's okay. Right.
Yeah.
And it's not all you. Yeah. Just practicing being the observer and building the muscle. And then when you can, even sometimes it's just repetition. So the first time maybe you're in it, maybe you have like a really like frustrating day or something, and you're not able to pull in the observer, but you, for a minute, for a second, you thought about it. Like that's a win. That's a win.
Yeah.
And so you keep building that muscle and you keep coming back to it. And one day you'll have some big emotion come through and you'll be able to go right into the observer and you'll be like, there's this person having this pretty crazy experience right now. It seems pretty tough for them,
Yeah.
And suddenly you're not all that. And suddenly there's space. And then suddenly when there's space, there's different options, right? So we're just building this gap. We're building this space for your body and your nervous system to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not even necessarily, you're not suppressing anything, but you're maybe allowing the emotion to flow through. You're observing the emotion flow through, but from a higher order place, understanding where the emotion came through and also understanding how to learn from it.
Okay. So that's number one.
Yep.
What would you say is number two?
Number two is the breath.
The breath. Okay.
You gotta do the breath.
Tell me your favorite breath technique.
Yeah.
In order to regulate quickly.
Yes. And as a human monkeys, we want to be like, okay, you want to do a 2-count inhale, then a 3-count hold, and then you're going to exhale for 8. And this is the secret formula for breathing.
And when somebody else tells you a different version, your
They're
brain's
wrong.
like, oh my gosh, which one's the right one?
Which one's the, how do I breathe? This is pretty much like why there's confusion with how to feed your body, how to breathe. Like it's, the best breath is one that puts oxygen in your body.
What?
That's it. Yeah. So a very simple, if you want to, we go back to basics. And again, this is one of the things where you might just brush it under the rug, but try it out. You want to check in with your body 3 times a day to see if you're actually breathing. We tend to shallow breathe all day into the chest. It's a really common stress response. And remember, your body kind of gets addicted in a weird way to this stuff. It's bizarre, but the way that you hold yourself during the day, the way that you breathe, the way that you interact with people creates a certain kind of soup of chemicals in your body, and your body gets attuned and accustomed to it. And so when we talk about something as simple as putting breath back into your day, the mind is like, oh, it's too simple. It won't work.
Too simple.
And the body's like, we're in our little addictive stress cycle. So we get to keep ourselves here, and so it doesn't happen. It doesn't get integrated. So check in with yourself 3 times a day, use that higher order thinking. It all comes down to higher order thinking, being able to pull above the mind. Use your consciousness, which is bigger than your mind, to pull above the mind to then be able to make a better, more informed decision. And so with the breathing, a simple breath is in through your nose, out through your mouth. And you can even make a sound if you need a little reset, but just check in with yourself to see if you're breathing through the day, if you're breathing through your nose through the day, and just notice. Again, and you're also going to be building that observer muscle into that.
Yeah. The breath, I think there's a lot of people out there that are really familiar with sleep apnea and that other phenomenon that is called email apnea of like, as you're doing work throughout the course of the day, holding your breath. I noticed for back in the days when we used to read newspapers, whenever I would be reading the newspaper, I would hold my breath as I was reading.
Yeah.
And I get to the end and I'm like, why am I so out of breath?
Yeah.
It was because I was literally holding my breath as I was reading the news. And so it's so fantastic when you can start to be that observer and just notice, okay, what is my breath pattern like throughout the course of the day?
Yes.
But that 3 times a day, intentionally pausing.
Just for 2 minutes, just be like, all right, I'm going to pause everything else. And I'm just going to enjoy. I'm just going to breathe. I'm just going to feel, I'm going to be a human for like 2 minutes. We can do 2 minutes.
Yeah.
We can do it. We can do it for 2 minutes. We don't have to answer emails for 2 minutes. And there's going to be a little mental tug of war. The timer is going to go off and you're going to be like, it's more important for me to finish this email because then that's going to result in XYZ, which then that's going to result in achievements, which then that's going to result in validation, which then I'm worthy. Right. And so you're fighting a little bit of a deeply programmed agenda here, but use that higher order thinking. You hear the timer, and because we've talked about it now, you know how the brain's going to react. So you have that extra little juice to just try it. Just go outside and just enjoy, be in nature. Like, think of a goddess. She's just there.
I will say that work was one of the most profound for me, taking those moments and pairing it with the breath work. And, I remember very vividly being outside when we first started this work together, and I'm walking around in my backyard, and my next door neighbor, I'm just wandering around, kind of like waving my arms, and my eyes are closed, and I've got bare feet, and I'm feeling the earth.
Yes.
And my neighbor yells over, he's like, what are you doing over there?
Yes. Yes.
And it was just one of those moments where I had to chuckle to myself, and even just that act of, a little bit of that deep belly chuckle for myself was so lovely. And the way that you feel afterwards, if we bring it back, what is the outcome, right?
Yeah.
For those of us that are type A and always in our head and like, okay, but what is that going to do?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Right. The lightness. And again, what I felt after starting to do this work was that when I would experience something that was stressful, instead of getting stuck in that moment of stress and spiraling and finding myself totally burnt out, and then as a result, disengaging and being maybe stuck on the couch for days on end and not being productive, I was able to ebb and flow more effectively.
Yes.
And find that balance that everybody wants to talk about. I mean, I don't necessarily believe fully in balance, because it, to me, it means that everything's kind of got that equal, and you know what, there are going to be things that are more important to you.
Yeah.
So for me, balance really means that I'm able to ebb and flow when necessary. It allowed me to become more flexible, if you will.
Yes. And you start to realize the more that you take these moments for yourself, then the more it informs the other. And so you actually become more productive because you're able to have that little bit of respite. You think of like an Olympic sprinter. They don't just sprint forever. You sprint and then you rest, and then you sprint and then you rest. Like, you breathe in, then you breathe out. It's like an ebb and a flow. It's it's life.
Lindsay, it was so wonderful to talk with you today. And I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your gift with our audience. And just thank you so much for being here.
You are so welcome. This was my absolute joy. It was my pleasure. If you guys have any questions, just come find me.
Who are your clients these days?
I love working with entrepreneurs because they get it. They take personal responsibility for themselves, right? And they're willing to kind of do the harder stuff. They're willing to, not everyone's willing to look at their own shit, but entrepreneurs are.
I love working with entrepreneurs as well. I think that that's kind of my sweet space, but it's the willingness to look at our excuses.
Yes.
because we all have them, right?
Yep.
It's either I don't have enough time, or I've
Yep.
got to do these things, whether it's family or business related. There's all of these excuses.
Yeah.
And we're willing to question whether or not,
Yes.
even if they're true, are they useful? Are they
Yes.
are they being productive contributors to our lives? Do we want to continue to hold on to them, or are we ready to let them go?
Yes.
And open ourselves up to this other way of being? And I think that that
Yes.
is very true of entrepreneurs.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So entrepreneurs are kind of the manifestation of this energy, but I love working with anyone that's willing to, let's say, give it all up to get it all.
Yeah,
Anyone that's
love
willing
that.
to just release what doesn't serve them and bring in what is aligned, reconnect them to their own truth, their own beauty, their own perfection. And really things start to magnify and take off when you live in this frequency. It's beyond the mind, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Well, I will share your information with all of our listeners so that they can reach out and find you. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Lindsay.
Yes.
It's been great chatting.
It's been great chatting. Be well. Bye.